Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board, town hall, and mailing to the officially designated newspapers a list of the meeting dates annually, indicating that this meeting will take place at Town Hall, 7 p.m., Monday, January 23rd, 2023.
Ashley Addington.
Here.
Chandra Harjani.
Here.
Amy Lawrence.
Here.
Wolfgang Torres.
Here.
Gary Rosen.
Here.
Regina Truitt.
Here.
Vice Chairman Jessica Black.
Here.
Chairman Craig Platinum.
Here. Good evening, folks. We are going to start this evening with approval of minutes for January 9th, 2023, which was the previous meeting. Any corrections or changes to that set of minutes? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
I move approval of the minutes of January 9th, 2023.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Next up, we have the first memorializing resolution, which is a resolution of zoning board approval, professional services of our attorney, Robert Simon. That was circulated. Any questions on that contract? If not, can I have a motion to approve that contract?
Move approval of the contract authorizing professional services of Board Attorney Robert Simon.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hired.
Yeah, right. Next up, we have our memorializations of our first application, calendar 389222, Guido and Miriam Sototusky at 356 Hartshorn Drive in Short Hills. Any changes or corrections to that? Who's eligible?
Eligible because this was a denial. Eligible are Wolfgang, Ashley, and Craig.
I have a motion from one of those two, actually.
Move approval, calendar number 3892-22.
A second?
Second.
Yeah, okay.
Wolfgang Torres.
Yes.
Ashley Addington.
Yes.
Craig Platinum.
Yes, next up, we have calendar 390522, New Singular Wireless, AT&T 30 Bleecker Street, Millburn. Any changes or corrections to that memorialization? If not, then who do we have on that one?
Amy, Wolfgang, Chandra, Ashley, Jessica, Craig.
Okay, one of those, please make a motion on that.
I'll move approval of calendar 3905-22.
Great, and second?
I can say.
Amy Lawrence.
Yes.
Wolfgang Torres.
Yes.
Chandra Harjani.
Yes.
Ashley Addington.
Yes.
Jessica Black.
Yes.
Craig Platinum.
Yes. Next up, calendar 389822, Kim and Tim Milton at 144 Highland Avenue, Short Hills. Any changes or corrections to that memorialization? If not, who is eligible?
Amy, Wolfgang, Chandra, Jessica.
Would one of them like to make a motion to adopt?
I'll move approval of calendar 3898-22.
And second?
I'll second.
Amy Lawrence.
Yes.
Wolfgang Torres.
Yes.
Chandra Harjani.
Yes.
Jessica Black.
Yes.
Next up, calendar 389922, Trish New, Barker, and Rita Matthews, 5 Chestnut Place in Short Hills. Any corrections or changes?
Eligible are Amy, Wolfgang, Chandra, Jessica, Craig.
Can I have a motion, please?
I can move approval for calendar 3899-22.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Amy.
Amy Lawrence.
Yes.
Wolfgang Torres.
Yes.
Chandra Harjani.
Yes.
Jessica Black.
Yes.
Craig Platinum.
Yes. First on the new business, we have calendar 380721, Robert and Dina Imazo, which is 75 Wellington Short Hills. So they're asking for a 1-year extension of a previous approved variance.
Right, so they wrote a letter to the board dated January 11, 2023, requesting a 1-year extension so that they could have their contractor file for a permit to complete the planned renovation. And they expressed in their letter that they've had delays due to unforeseen circumstances or consequences of COVID-19 pandemic. And more particularly, that they wanted to wait for a particular contractor since he did such a good job on their kitchen renovation, et cetera, years ago, which of course we can understand for those of us who have taken on improvement work. So, as this board is aware, and typically when we grant approvals for variances, in this case, it was an FAR variance, one of the conditions is that the applicant shall apply for a building permit within 365 days of the publication of the variance determination. And in this case, they're asking for an additional 1-year period.
So in that case, unless anyone has any comments on this, can I have a motion to approve?
Could I just ask what would be the extension, when will the extension?
So is it from July or is it
From
from
the-
So
today?
it should, so the public, whenever the publication
Right,
was,
okay,
it should be 1 year from that,
August 16th.
yeah, an
so
additional
it'll be
year.
on the 20th.
Because otherwise, then they have, like a year and a half.
Right.
Any questions or comments? In that case, can I have a motion?
Move approval of the 1-year extension for calendar 3807-21.
Thank you. A second.
I'll second.
Do a roll call on that or? Okay.
Ashley Abutor,
Yes.
Chandra Varjani,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutores,
Yes.
Gary Rosen.
Yes.
Jessica Glad.
Yes.
Craig Platinum.
Yes. Okay, our first application this evening, calendar 390622, property location at 42 Jefferson, A. Abbasi and N. Malik of 42 Jefferson, Short Hills.
You want to all be sworn in?
Yeah, if you're gonna all speak, sure.
Give me a second, please.
Otherwise, we can have, Christian this evening.
So this is all voice recorded.
Right, okay.
Could you just?
Okay, will each one of you raise your right hand? Solemnly swear affirm that the testimony you're going to give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Okay. One at a time, please state your name and address.
Nabil Malik, 42 Jefferson Avenue.
Anika Abbasi, 42 Jefferson Avenue.
Richard Keller from Casey and Keller, 258 Main Street in Millville.
Thank you. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. I'm going to read off this paper. My wife has asked me to read off the paper so I don't forget anything, so I apologize. My name is Nabil. I'm here with my wife, Anika. Both of us feel incredibly lucky and humbled to be part of this community. We're grateful to all of you guys for your time this evening and giving attention to our variance application. Short Hills has always been a dream for both of us. I grew up in central New Jersey, and ever since I can remember, I've wanted to raise my family in this town. It had incredible schools, strong family values, a really amazing downtown, a picturesque roads and community that we wanted to be a part of. We got married 10 years ago, and soon this dream became hers as well. We are now in the process of building our forever home at 42 Jefferson, and we could not be more excited. We've actually been in the town for the last 3 years, and it's exceeded all expectations. A little bit about our family. Anika is a full-time mom of 2 girls. My older daughter, Summer, is in 3rd grade, and she's part of the Hartshorn system. My younger daughter, Inaya, is 4 years old, and she's so excited to be starting at Hartshorn next year. We're very family-oriented. We pride ourselves on having good values and live a pretty simple life. We don't drink alcohol, so I can kind of commit to all of you that there's not going to be any crazy partying in our backyard. A little background about the house and our application. So we bought the house. So when we bought the house, the pool and cabana were nearly 10 feet lower than the house. And you couldn't even see the cabana from where the house was, which raised 2 real concerns for us and our families. First and foremost, there was a safety risk for our family. Concerns about the safety of our kids going back and forth to the house from the pool area when there's no visibility from the house to there's no visibility between the 2 areas. God forbid that there's some incident in the backyard, we wanted visibility and access to make it to the area quickly. Secondly, given how far the pool will be from the house, we saw this as an issue if the kids needed to use the bathroom. It is not only a long walk, but if one of the kids needs to stay out there while my wife takes the other one in, or if I have to take the other one in, the other parent, you would not be able to see the other kid from the house. Unfortunately, I work in New York. I travel and I work a lot, and we don't have childcare. All of this burden falls on her, and it would be my wife using the space with the kids alone most of the time. So when we realized we did not have enough building coverage, we tried to explore the option of raising the backyard and potentially making the pool closer to the house. After a lot of discussion with Rich, Rich felt that he did not feel it's possible, and he definitely felt that it was aesthetically not pleasing to the neighbors to raise it that much. We were able to lift the pool area slightly, but it feels very separate from the house. And for that reason, we still feel that the small bathroom would be really, really helpful to help us utilize the space. I'm gonna pass it off to Rich. You can explain in more detail, but I'm available for any questions you all may have. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
Hello, welcome. It's nice to be back. I have our drawings over here. I did make a couple modifications.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah, sorry. See, that's how long it's been. Qualifications. I am, and especially for the new members of the board. I am a licensed professional engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey. I'm a principal in the firm of Casey and Keller, third generation. I hold a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Rutgers University with a declared concentration in water resources and environmental engineering. And I also hold a Master's in Architecture with a concentration in urban planning and design, and that is from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, where I also taught for approximately 11 years in both the graduate and undergraduate divisions. I have been licensed as an engineer since 1989, as a planner since 1990. I have provided professional consulting services as a planner to the Borough of Caldwell, and for 4 years I was the engineer to the Planning Board and Board of Adjustment in Long Hill. I've appeared before this board, the Planning Board, approximately 110 boards throughout the state of New Jersey, and my licenses are still in good effect. The hardest part about getting here tonight was making sure I had a suit that still fits. So it's good to be back. So hopefully, if you'll accept my credentials, I can explain a little bit about the application.
Yes, your qualifications are accepted. Please proceed.
Thank you. And I do have a couple. I have a change. You guys received the variance application. It's the Casey and Keller variance plan. It is dated 9/15/2022. I have a revision to that. We're going to call A1. It's dated 1/23/2023. Open the title block. I've labeled it up top as an exhibit. And the only difference on this is I've put in green, light green shading some of the existing vegetation in the backyard, and I have shown some supplemental 7 to 8 foot evergreens to go in the backyard for additional screening, which I'll talk about in more detail. So if I start with the variance application, which is my sheet 1 or A1, you'll see the property sits on the south side of Jefferson Avenue, about 288 feet to the west. To the west of Washington Street, Washington Avenue, excuse me. And we're about 357 feet to the east of the point where Jefferson splits into Montview at the triangle right there. The property is, and I would point out that we are wholly located in the R3 zone. What's somewhat unique in the town is that we are contiguous to an R5. It's usually not, you see R3s are next to R4s, but not always R5s. Properties behind us that front on Barnesdale are actually located in the R5 zone. The property is 122 feet wide and 230 feet deep. It contains 28,414 square feet in the R3 zone, where 29,000 square feet is required. So we're just under, just slightly non-conforming, but basically we're just about fully conforming with the requirements for the B3 zone. We are not located in a historic district. Apologize for any of you that tried to look at the site over the weekend, because I wasn't aware it was fully locked up. If you went today, you were able to get in, but it was a construction site, so you had to be a little intrepid to get back there. So I did bring some photographs with me today. And as you saw, and as was alluded to by the applicant, Nabil, the property has a house under construction and a pool under construction in the back. So that pool, all of the coverages we show on this plan, the stormwater management plan are all part of an approved plan that did not need any variances. So we already have our building permits for the house, the pool, all the coverages, and our soil erosion sediment control plan certification from the Soil Conservation District, and that's why they are under construction today. I'll just briefly go to A2 for a little more neighborhood context, or sub-context. A2 is dated 1/23/2023. It's labeled photo board number 1. All photos are taken by Casey and Keller. The top 2 were taken back in March 22nd of 2021, and the bottom 2 were taken Saturday, January. They were taken yesterday. I'm sorry, Saturday. No, Sunday. Yesterday, January 22nd. The photographs, certainly the bottom 2, represent the site as it exists today. The top photo, I didn't have any great photos because they were from my surveyors who don't always take you'd think that I charge you for the digital photos. They should take hundreds, but they never seem to get what you want. But when I first went to the site, I looked at it before I quoted the project, and they said, what are we going to do with the pool in the back? And I said, what pool? I didn't see a pool back there because I walked in the backyard and I looked in the back. And as you get closer, you'll see the old cabana, which was about 360 square feet, sat down about 10 feet below the lawn. The old pool in the back was actually 13 feet below the finished floor of the primary residence, which is about the same elevation as the house under construction. Photograph number 2, you're looking to the west along that. You can see that it was quite easy for animals to get up on the roof because it's set so low. And that's why between the fencing, you couldn't even see the cabana or the pool below it. It was quite detached, but it did provide a transition area as you transition to the areas both in Barnesdale and as the properties on either side of us drop in topography. I would point out the neighbors on Barnesdale also have a retaining wall that's just off the property to further mitigate some of that slope. The photograph number 3 at the bottom shows, for those of you who couldn't get back there, shows the pool under construction, fully compliant with all of the zoning ordinance. And it shows really some of the existing green giant arborvitae that are along the property line. The retaining wall is actually already started under construction. So you can see one of the things I've been really happy with this builder and the client is that they've been managed to save almost all of the mature vegetation on the perimeters of the property. Wasn't a raise everything, put stuff in later. They've really done a good job of working around and protecting those root structures. So the green giant arborvitaes that sit along the southerly property line, those are remaining. And you can see the photograph where I came over the other side and I'm looking to the southwest. Again, you'll see the dense vegetation, which screens the entire area from the properties that face on Barnesdale Road. This pool is about 4.5 to 5 feet above the old pool, but it still feels quite separated. I'll also just quickly go to A3, dated 1/23/2023. This is an aerial photo, nearmap.com. The photograph date, the capture date was October 6th, 2022. Show the house that's largely constructed. This shows the old pool before it was demoed in October. You can see how much closer the old pool was to the neighboring property. Actually, it was only from the patio, it was only about 6 feet off where 12 feet is required. So by we are moving the pool back to be fully compliant at 13 feet where 12 feet is required. You can see there's where we're proposing the 102 square foot cabana, which is, I believe, some 13 feet, I'll get the exact numbers in a second, off the left side property and about 13 feet off the back. So it's fully compliant with all the requirements of the ordinance and setbacks. And it's about 11 foot and change, maybe 11 foot 10 tall. So nowhere near the 18 foot permitted by code.
Rich, you mentioned a prior cabana, I think.
Yep.
Where was that located?
The prior cabana is
on A3.
Is nestled in, on A3, it's nestled into the existing retaining. Right where you see the gap where we're having proposed lawn area, it's nestled right in that area. So it was further away from the rear property lines, but it was about 15 feet tall as opposed to the 11-foot bathroom we're proposing. And it was about 364 square feet, I believe.
I was there yesterday, but it was locked, as you mentioned. That's been demoed at this point.
That has been partially, we use the back wall of the cabana as a retaining wall. So that'll be parred and beautified. But we did keep part of that wall in place. But yeah, the main cabana has come down. We're just using it for retaining.
And the currently proposed cabana, the 102 square foot one, that's 11 feet tall?
It's it is 11 foot 2 inches tall,
versus the 15 foot tall.
approximately 15 foot tall current one.
Thank you.
That's 102 versus 364, I believe. what I wanted to show on this photograph was, again, the dense, and that's where I really miss having the Zoom meetings, because I could blow this up nice and big for you, but I went with as large as I could really kind of get the whole property in. You'll see, these are the area, the existing arborvitae. There is existing vegetation, both coniferous and deciduous, that come down the left property. We're actually fairly contiguous to the neighbor's cabana on the left and the neighbor's garage on the right. And all of this vegetation in the back will be remaining. We'll just be spotting in some additional evergreen underneath the deciduous canopy in any place we have gaps. And any of the existing landscape that's not in good shape, we will replace with landscape. So this was really just to show how lush it is, and not only will the cabana not be visible from the street, it will not be visible from any of the neighboring properties, certainly with the existing landscaping, and then when we add the infill landscaping in the middle, it really protects it. There's no visibility from the second floor into the site. My clients don't really want to be looking in their house, and they don't want people looking down on them. So there's existing landscaping which will be maintained and will be supplemented. So the last sheet, before I go back to my primary sheet, this was part of your application package. This was the architect's plan. It is a fairly banal and simple structure. It is basically 11 foot tall. There's a door in. It's got a changing room and a shower and a toilet and some areas for towels. So it is as simple and understated and as small as we really could get it to be functional. If we go back to the main plan, I would point out, one of the things that we were concerned about. A couple things happened. One is we made it very clear to the applicants that with the house they were proposing, they were not going to get a 300 or 400 square feet cabana, and they were okay with that. We were actually reserving about 106 square feet for a bathroom. Unfortunately, in the development of the house, we started with a frame house. We then went to a brick house. We added a brick ledger in there, a brick ledge on the entire perimeter, which is 4 inches all around. That ultimately, after the foundation was put in, they decided to go back to a stucco finish, but we had already picked that additional 4 inches up. That 4 inches around the entire perimeter is 106 square feet. So whereas we originally thought we'd have a small area for 106 square feet built into the design, that got taken away due to construction issues and the switching of materials. And that's about how much we're off. The difference that we're over in total building coverage is about 4 inches in the entire perimeter of the house, which is not very much, the thickness of one brick. As indicated, when we made the client aware that the changes in the material meant that we now had only 2 or 3 square feet, not the 106 square feet, that was when there was the decision, well, what can we do about picking this up? Can we bring it up to grade? Can we move it closer? It really was not possible given we needed virgin soil. A lot of this is fill in the area. We didn't want to depress the backyard and export soil to be lower than what's there or drop below the neighbors, even though we were a little higher than them right here on the sides. But we also did not want to pick this up to be 9 feet tall than the neighbors behind us. We felt it was inappropriate for this pool to sit so much above the properties that are behind us on Barnsdale. So we felt that 5 foot was a reasonable amount. We could put a retaining wall in that would not structurally load the neighbor's retaining wall. We'd still have enough room to work within that lower plateau and get the property up. When the pool got constructed, I think is when the light bulb went off for the client, and they said, well, it's not enough for us to feel secure. What can we do? And that's when we came in with the 102 square foot application to see before you. And unfortunately, which puts us over by, I think, 98 square feet in total. The 101 square foot bathroom, and that puts us over by, we're exceeding by 98 feet. I would point out, as I said, the previous pool and patio were non-conforming as to the required setbacks. The variance relief that's requested then is from section 606.2E2B, that is maximum building coverage, where 13% of the lot is permitted. 13.35% is proposed. That means we're exceeding what's allowable by 98 square feet. And that's the only variance that we need.
Rich, if or in my elementary math, if the lot is conforming, I know it's a little bit, tiny bit undersized, but if it's conforming, you only deviate by around 22 square feet.
Yeah, I would be closer, yeah. So, thank you. And if I was, and keep in mind, properties right behind us in the R5 zone allow considerably higher building coverage. So we're certainly not overbuilding for the neighborhood, if you could even see it from the neighbors. So we think the variance is primarily a C2 variance. It does have some C1 mixed in. And by C1, especially for the new board members, C2, actually, excuse me, is what's known as the flexible C variance. It is where the project as proposed represents a better alternative than a conforming one. And the municipal board can grant such a variance when we can demonstrate that the purposes of the municipal land use law are advanced by the application and that the benefits outweigh any detriments. So we don't have to have a hardship, although I think the topography does create that hardship in being good neighbors, but it's really an aesthetic decision, not an engineering decision. So the purposes of the act that are advanced under municipal land use law 4055 D2, first one is section A. C2. 45, C2, correctly, sorry. No, under the purposes of the act 4055 D2. Those are the purposes of the act, right? No?
40, 50, I see what you're saying.
4055
I
D2.
got it.
Okay. So the purposes, A, is the promotion of safety and general welfare. We certainly feel that it does, as was pretty well articulated by Nabil, that it presents a safer alternative than not having one, because again, there is no visibility. It's always a decision. Do we want the pool to be visible from the kitchen, or do we want remote? The topography kind of lends itself and really forced the pool to go back in the general area where it was. It was the most practical, least amount of fill in the site, least negative impact on the neighbors. The pool kind of wants to go back there, but there's no intervisibility, which as indicated, for one person watching the kids, do they stay with the child at the pool, or do they escort the child or the neighboring children back into the house to use the bathroom? So we feel there's certainly a safety issue that's created, but that's advanced or a potential hazardous situation that's alleviated by having a small bathroom in the area of the cabana. There's also the promotion of a desirable visual environment. We think that this is a much more aesthetic, pleasing proposal than to elevate this whole back another 4 to 5 feet and possibly try to move the pool up slightly. Because again, I think it would, right now it sits significantly from properties on Barnsdale. We picked it up another 4 feet. I think it would be even more out of character and less neighborly to those people behind us. So we think it advances two purposes of the Land Use Act. Again, C1 being, well, there's a hardship created by the topography. I don't think that's a sole hardship, but the topography certainly comes into play when we're balancing the C2 criteria. And I think I think we advanced the positive criteria through the advancement of two purposes of the act. And then secondly, on the negative criteria, which is in two prongs, we think that there's no substantial detriment to the public good, and there's no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the master plan or zoning ordinance. With regard to the public good, it can't be seen with the existing trees. It certainly can't be seen from Jefferson. It can barely still be seen from the backyard. Again, instead of a 14 to 15 foot, it's an 11-foot cabana. It's still depressed below the property. It really cannot be seen by any of the neighboring properties, especially when looking at the vegetation that was shown on A3. Can't be seen from either of the two houses behind us. And the tall, mature evergreens behind us also limit any views from the rear. First floor certainly, and then obviously even the second floor of the properties that front on Barnsdale. So we feel that with the supplemental evergreens, which we're showing on the plan to be 7 to 8 foot evergreens typical to supplement existing landscape screens. They would be green giant arborvitae or similar plant material. 7 to 8 footers tend to grow the fastest. When you try to put 12 foot in, they find that within 3 years, the 7 to 8s grow are taller than the 12 to 13 foot. So we think it's most appropriate. There is some deciduous. There is one tree that's remaining. There's a deciduous tree on the neighboring property. If you find some screening, we can certainly infill that area to limit any views from the neighbors. And we certainly think that there's no detriment to the intent and purpose of the master plan. I mean, the sort of overriding goal of the master plan is to encourage land use that promotes the character of the township as a small suburb of the highest quality. It's an area where there are many pools. We're under on coverage, we're under on building, we're over on southern building coverage, we're under on lot coverage, we comply with rear yard unoccupied. We're compliant with all of the sections of the ordinance. We just would like permission to put a very modest cabana on the site where we thought we'd be able to do it without a variance, but it turns out we do need one. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Any questions?
Couple of questions. So I couldn't visit the site, but in terms of the topographical difference between the height at which the cabana will be here versus the neighboring plot, that's one. How far, or is there a height difference between the two properties on either side? And second was, how far is the structure, the building structure of the neighbors from this property line?
Sure. Well, I would point out that with regard to your second question, the proposed cabana is 13 feet and I think 15 point something. So we are in excess of the 12-foot requirements. With regard to the neighboring house, that's the one thing nice about these being to scale, is that the cabana
Rich.
I'm gonna take some measurements. No.
Okay.
So the cabana is approximately 55 feet from the closest part of the house directly behind us. The house on the next property is probably a larger distance. So the closest house is about 55 feet behind us. And the topographic difference between the two, as I said, they've got a slight retaining wall in their backyard we didn't want to structurally interact with. Their property is at about 89 foot, and our proposed pool is up at just about 98 feet. So we're still about 9 feet above the neighbors through the combination of their retaining wall and our retaining wall. And so that's mitigated by landscaping between them. And that's why we didn't want to add another 4 to 5 feet on top of that.
How big was the pool house that was taken down?
I think it was 300, it's in my notes here, I think it was 364 square feet.
And that square footage was then given to the house,
That was
right?
given to the house. Yeah, we thought we had maintained about 106, but that was not the case.
Threading the needle on the development, huh?
It's been known to happen in town.
Okay.
You can see, it doesn't take much. That 4-inch brick shelf, adds 106 square feet right off the bat, so.
106 square feet, that's a tough margin to stay within.
Yep. So, but again, this is not we were very clear and the clients understood that they were never going to get a variance for a 350-foot pool house, 348 feet in excess. And they were comfortable going with either getting the pool closer to the house or elevated, or going with about 100 square foot bathroom, which is what we came up with. Unfortunately, with the development of the architecture, that got eaten up in construction details. So, but I still think it stands on its own in terms of it certainly meets the negative criteria. I think that this one, more than any other pool application I know where they exceeded building coverage, this one really is remote, and I think is probably more justified in terms of wanting to get a bathroom that's closer when you can't possibly see the pool area from any part of the house, or certainly the first floor of the house.
So how much of the grade was raised? The grade was raised back there from where the old pool house was.
We raised it up just under 5 feet.
So 5 feet, and then you're 11 feet. So that's actually staying at 16 feet.
Well, that area is a little lower back there, but it's probably about the same height as the old one.
Just push back.
Just push back. But again, it's got a much smaller footprint than the previous one. It's basically, as you saw from the plan, it's really just large enough to get a toilet and shower.
I have another question. Did you consider anywhere else putting the cabana further from the neighbors?
Well, I think, again, we're exceeding the required setback, so it could be higher. But it really was the most logical spot. Again, since we're pulling the pool away from the rear yard, keeping 13 feet, we didn't want, there was really limited opportunities to get it nestled into the series of retaining walls that drop down there. There really wasn't much room on the lower side, the north side. And so we really wanted to migrate somewhere into this area. And so we chose an area that was, again, met the setbacks, allowed for some versatility in using the patio for play and lounge chairs and things like that. And I would point out that, this is this supplemental landscape plan is not the final landscape plan. Once the project is complete, they'll take an inventory. I know a lot of the native rhododendrons were maintained. There'll be another supplemental landscape plan that will add additional perimeter planting on the tops and bottom of the walls, as well as foundation plantings, et cetera. So this really what we're showing is that you will not be able to see it. It's so small in its footprint and it exceeds setbacks. So it was really still the most logical place. We didn't want to have it in this nook where you would wrap around it. Again, we're really trying to have a better viewing experience of that lower level. And since we didn't need any setback variances for the location, and it wasn't really any higher than the old cabana, we felt it was the most appropriate location.
Could you review again why there was a change in the perimeter architecturally? You mentioned there was a change in materials and that put you over.
Yeah, we had tried to maintain about 100 square foot buffer to do just in case they wanted to just a bathroom. And at one point we had a frame house, and when they decided to add brick all around the house, that added a 4-inch brick shelf, which you measure your areas to the foundation. So that bumped us up to where we were very close to what was permitted. And we let that go because it was permitted. But subsequently, the brick didn't happen. They went with stucco, but the foundation was already in.
One clarification, why did you go from frame to brick to stucco?
I think the idea was, I'm not sure why they went from brick to stucco.
It was $120,000 more expensive. So during COVID, the prices went up and we decided to bring it down.
You mean from the brick to the stucco?
From the brick to the stucco. The stucco is cheaper.
Right.
Then the brick. And why did you go from frame to brick?
I mean, it was like my wife's suggestion. Then we got into reality and we saw the prices were going crazy, especially during COVID. And then we decided that doesn't work for us within our budget. And we put it down.
Any other questions? Any questions from the audience for Mr. Keller or? Come on, you gotta come up.
Just identify yourself.
Garen Serafian,
What's
Garen Serafian,
what's your address?
35 Barnesdale Road.
Could you spell your last name?
S like Sarah, S-A-R-A, F as in Frank, I-A-N as in Nancy.
So that's directly behind the subject property where I was
Yes.
giving that distance to.
I've met them. Good to see you. Great dessert when you guys. I had a cupcake when they first came. No, just I had found out about this late last week, by the way. The letter had come in, so this is sort of just hearing about the details. So excuse me. So just a few questions. One was answered because it was the height, so it's 5 foot up, so it's basically 15, 16 feet. The other was if it's close to the retaining wall in the back, then does it have any issues with the retaining wall for us or the backyard neighbors and those to the left side of it, which is 39 or 30, I'm sorry, whatever the number is, 33?
On our street or on your street?
35 runs on the one next to it, wherever the retaining wall is.
27.
27.
No, and that's why we, zoning says I can put a retaining wall right on the property line. But we looked at your wall, we took a look over the fence, we took some measurements, and we didn't feel that, we wanted to make sure that our wall didn't structurally affect your wall. So that's why we moved the wall back from the property. In fact, it was actually even constructed a little further away than we called for it to, so there wouldn't be any structural interaction. And there's no structural interaction. The pool, interesting, if you see the pictures, pools are built like a ship. They are structurally sound on their own, and you backfill against them, so they don't add any pressure. In fact, the water weighs about half the weight of soil. So the pool won't have any structural interaction on our wall, and our wall was purposely pulled off the line, both to keep the existing landscaping and also make sure we had no structural impact on any of the retaining walls around us. So we gave up 5 or 6 feet or more to do that.
And then, how about the sewage and the piping and all, does it go, because that piece of property, there's a long history behind it belonging to the Barnesdale property as well as the Jefferson property that's gone back and forth. This was like a 100-year lease beforehand. Then before we bought it, was split up and given back to the Jefferson property. And there was a lot of connections that were there before that were hopefully all severed. But I don't know what you guys have found or how the connection would be after that. Does any of the sewage go through to the Barnesdale side?
Well, in terms of sanitary sewage, flushing
And
toilets
just
and things like that,
yeah.
that all goes to the front. What we've done is we've provided a connection out into the existing sanitary sewer in the front of the property. So whatever, if anything used to go through, and it happens a lot in old Short Hill sections of Short Hills where sanitary goes through another property without an easement. With regard to the stormwater, we've kind of taken most of the stormwater management off as we kind of show the basic shell of it, but we have an approved grading plan to cover all of that coverage with a dry well in the back. We've done some preliminary soils work. The soils seem to be willing to accommodate permeability downward. So we're collecting, first of all, we're taking all the existing house, whatever on the old house used to flow to the back is now captured. It's brought forward and into dry wells, and we're going across to an existing manhole that's at the intersection of Birch and Jefferson. So whatever used to land on the house and come back towards you, as with the new house, and certainly once the gutters go on it, all that comes forward and away. So that's being removed from heading downhill towards Barnesdale. And whatever's landing in the back here, from the patios or in this lower section, even though it wasn't strictly required, we added an additional dry well to get soil permeability, and we collected low points into a dry well. So there's certainly, it meets the standard of making sure that we reduce or certainly don't increase any stormwater runoff to your property. And that's part of an approved grading plan that accounts for all of the coverage, including the cabana, whether we build the cabana or not. So you're protected under both the soil conservation certification as well as the township grading plan.
Those are only ones that come to mind. Thank you.
Sure.
So with that, any comments from the audience?
Rich, can I ask, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This question. On your lot coverage, says existing 8650 proposed 9919. So I'm just asking about that in terms of what you just said about the capturing of the stormwater in the rear. So the representation is that before the cabana was proposed, that area in the foundation was patio, so there's no net change?
That's correct. That area, there's no change. So what I'm showing here, yeah, that's existing proposed. Okay, yep.
Thanks, sorry.
Sure. As I mentioned, any comments from the audience? In that case, I'll close the public portion of this hearing. Board members, what are your comments? Silence is deafening.
I'll start off. When I did visit the property when it was open last week, and I walked over and I was actually confused when I first got to the backyard because I was like, where's the pool? So you do, I think it's very apparent when you walk into that backyard, how set back and how much lower, even now with it being raised up, the pool area is. It's a bit of a mess back there, so kind of trying to get out and, envision, where everything is gonna be was, even with the plans was a little bit difficult. I think that when I went back there, I knew that the variance was for the building coverage, the overage on coverage, but I was shocked that it wasn't for it being too close to the property line. It looks like there's a lot more space on the plans than it did back there, but in any case, we're not here for, variance for, for setback issues. So that being said, I think that this is a pretty minimal addition to the building coverage. I do think that the property could handle it, and I think for all of those reasons, I would be in favor of the application.
So when I see a 98 square foot deviation, the first thing I think about is like, try harder, right? When we have a brand new development, when you pull up to a new house and you see a building coverage issue, you think to yourself, we're not trying here. And I see how you did it. If you're gonna run it that tight on building a new house and then try to put this in the backyard, it does get difficult. I am struggling with the C1, C2. I don't really see a C1, even though the lot's 600 square feet undersized. And for C2, maximizing lots in Short Hills with building, I'm not exactly sure how it's beneficial to the zoning plan, but I'm interested to hear from my other board members here as to their thoughts.
Two things that come to my mind. One with respect to that is that whenever there's something added, I agree completely that it's not a C1. That doesn't make sense. In terms of a benefit under a C2 though, anything that adds safety aspect, I tend to kind of be sympathetic towards that. I understand what they're trying to do. I furthermore like what the additional screening was added in, because if you look toward the back of the lot there, this towards the right side of the back, there's already pretty heavily screened. Toward the left side, not so much, but they propose to fill that in and then add additional screening on the left side of the cabana itself. And I think with that screening, I think that goes a long way to making sure that nobody is visually affected by this structure.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
I have the same view. On the C2 side, clearly benefits outweigh the detriments, given what the goal here is. Kind of create that safety environment for family. And it sounded fairly minimal in terms of the ask. Granted that this was a brand new project, could have worked around, but given the explanation that we just heard, sounds like every effort was made, and I could be supportive of the application.
Thank you, Chandra.
I would also be supportive under C2. I was able to get there last week, it wasn't locked up, and it is much lower than the rest of the house, and I do think it is a safety issue, and I don't think 98 square feet is a large ask, and given the whole history of what happened, I would support it.
Then in that case, could I have a motion?
This is on approval of the application based on C2.
C2.
I'll move approval of the.
I'm sorry, just can I ask a question? Do we want to stipulate that screening has to be in place? as part of
Sure,
this?
got that for sure.
Certainly we can do that. Keep in mind that as for all of our resolutions, all representations of the applicants, both verbally and as set forth in their exhibits and their plans, are considered as conditions of approval. So if they deviate or vary from that, they would have to come back to the board.
Understood, okay, thank you. Sorry.
I'll move to approve. Should I specify that it's on a C2 business?
Sure.
Okay.
Why not?
Per a C2, on a C2 basis.
And a second.
I'll second.
Ashley Abigor,
Yes.
Chandra Hordani,
Yes.
Amy Morris. Yes. Wolfgang Kutoris,
Yes.
Gary Rosen,
Yes.
Jessica Black,
Yes.
Craig Platinum.
Yes, good luck with the project.
Thank you so much.
All right, next up, we have calendar 390822, 279 Melbourne Avenue. Applicant is Arthur and Maria Isabella.
Good evening, my name is Priscilla Triolo. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Bidiger, Elias, Triolo and Deal and Paramus. We're on behalf of the applicants. It's Garden State Dental Design and Maria and Arthur Zabella, who are the proprietors of the Dental Design. We have a doctor of medical dentistry and a medical doctor who are the two owners of Garden State Dental Design. The property is in a B4 zone, and we are looking for a use variance. It's in the lower or the beginning portion of your downtown area. It's right before Milburn Avenue splits. And we're also looking for a loading variance because the proposed occupancy does not need a loading zone. This particular property was the subject of a planning board resolution in 2018. The property was fully developed in accordance with that resolution. There are 4 apartments on the second floor, and it was approved for a restaurant on the first floor with a condition that the restaurant obtain 7 extra parking spaces off-site to ameliorate the parking variance that was requested. The restaurant never occupied the premises. It is currently vacant. It has been vacant since it was constructed. There have been, the 4 apartments are occupied, but nothing much else has happened. No restaurant has expressed an interest in occupying this property. With limited parking, there's only 25 parking spaces on the site, of which 4 are dedicated to the residents. The applicants are contract purchasers. The contract is contingent on their getting the approval so that they can occupy. We come before you as owners and occupants so that the vacancy issue will be addressed basically in perpetuity because the owners will be the occupants. And we are looking to obtain the variance so that we can proceed with the new state-of-the-art dental services. This evening, I have 3 witnesses. Arthur and Maria Zabella would like to testify and explain to you what their practice is. We have Lindsay Knight from Neglia Engineering and Planning as a professional planner who has examined the area and all of your requisite records, and will be testifying on behalf of the applicant. Just by way of a little bit of housekeeping, we did notify the people within 200 feet, and we did publish, and we provided the affidavit of publication and service to your secretary. Now, at this point in time, I'd like to have both Arthur and Maria Zabella sworn in at the same time, unless the board has some questions for me.
Yeah, one quick question. Upon visiting site, you mentioned there were 4 spots designated to the apartments.
In the resolution?
No, currently, you said there was 4 spots designated?
Yes. And actually, I can't tell you what's painted on the ground, but I do know the resolution said 1 spot per apartment.
Because it looks like there's 2 per apartment right now.
The current owner, I guess, tried to get tenants to come in. The leases are 1 space. We would eliminate that and reduce it back down to 1 space, because then we will eliminate completely a parking variance, because the use that we are proposing only requires 20 spaces.
Okay.
And so that will come off with a scraper and toothbrush if we have to, but they're only getting 4 spaces because our use gets 20 spaces, and then you have 1 guest space available.
How many bedrooms are those units upstairs?
I'm sorry?
How many bedrooms are those units upstairs, do we know?
2, 1, and 2, 2.
Thank you.
We provided a copy of the 2018 resolution with our application. And the last thing I wanted to say is that we also requested that we not be required to provide a site plan to you this evening, and what we instead provided you with was the approved site plan from 2018, because there is absolutely no intention to change anything in the building, the parking, nothing on physically to the building. This is purely use variance to go inside the vacant space, and the loading variance because there's no loading that would be required for this occupancy. Maria and Arthur?
We're gonna swear the two of you in, so.
Okay.
2 seconds.
Yep, hold on, we'll see. So just a question for the attorney.
Okay.
So with regard to the architectural, or I guess the floor plan, right? That is, I'm sorry.
Kapler?
Yes.
Catherine, yeah.
Is there gonna be any witness testifying to that, or?
The clients will, because they were the ones who designed it, he just drew it.
Okay, very good, thank you. Okay. So raise your right hand, you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're gonna give tonight's truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Okay, one at a time, state your name and address for the record.
Maria?
My name is Maria Zabella. I'm an infectious disease physician. And
Arthur Zabella, dentist, and the property is 271 Milburn Avenue.
And you are both the, each
Purchasers,
50% owner of Garden State Dental Design.
Correct, and we're the purchasers of the property. Yep.
Okay. The attorney, I think I got that here by mistake. The attorney has questioned the proposed layout and the occupancy, so if we could first have, and I can't say Dr. Zabella because both of you will answer.
First name.
Dr. Maria, if you could please briefly explain the practice, and when you're ready to explain the layout, which you were critical of.
I will give that over to my husband for the dental
Oh.
practice, and I will go over the layout. That's
Okay.
Whichever way you want to proceed, that's perfectly fine. Like I said, I'm Arthur Zabella, a dentist here in New Jersey for 15 and a half years. Went to Rutgers, then proceeded on to NYU, got the dental education there, got some advanced training over in California, Loma Linda University, then traveled to Europe and Spain and Italy for some more advanced training for surgeries and then aesthetic rehabilitations. And basically the practice, what we're trying to achieve here is just to have let me see here, the future plans of the practice, basically just to have a boutique style business where, an office where it's low volume.
Well, let me help you.
Yeah.
Are you a traditional dentist?
Well, no. Basically, what we're looking to do is to do minimally invasive procedures for patients where we're doing a more advanced, high-level, like surgery, full mouth rehabilitation, aesthetic dentistry, strictly for that type of clientele. So low volume, basically. It's not like a high-volume type of office. Yeah.
Is the practice unique in northern New Jersey?
It is, because basically what we would be able to do is offer a full mouth rehabilitation dentistry in one setting. In addition to that, we would also have a dental laboratory. So typically what ends up happening is for a patient who needs this type of work, they need to see multiple dentists, multiple offices. So what we're able to do is have this all in one location, including, sedations and what have you. So typically the patients, because I currently have a practice in Clark for about 11 years now. So typically what ends up happening is patients come in for an evaluation. We do 3D scanning, intraoral scanning, facial scannings, digital photography, CAT scans, low dose, and then they come in for consultation afterwards to go over the plan. And then what we're able to do is provide them with the smile design, set out their surgeries, bone grafting, what have you. And then basically have the laboratory fabricate everything in-house. We also have the technician. This is a CAD/CAM 3D type of system. And then we also have a ceramist on site. And then the nice thing is with this type of, with these types of procedures, we're doing is what we're utilizing is the patient's blood, specifically their plasma, to enhance the healing. Basically, what usually takes 6 or so months, we can do it in a lot less time, 3 to 4 months. Much better for the patient, and it's less visits. Yeah, minimally invasive procedures. So it's very, very unique in this particular type of setting.
Would you classify it as state of the art?
Absolutely. This type of treatment is really advanced in Europe. It's very popular throughout the world as well. I work very closely with the owner who developed this type of technology. BTI, it's a biotechnology institute in Spain, where I go with him, lecture internationally here in the States as well. When I was there in November, Rafael Nadal basically goes to him to get treatments for his ailments. He's a professional tennis player. So this is very high level type of things, treatments.
It's a fair statement to say that this is not a place where somebody comes to just get a filling.
Absolutely not. We can absolutely offer that type of treatment, but this is more so for someone needing full mouth rehabilitation with minimally invasive procedures. So really help them out, lower the risk and enhance their healing.
And Dr.
Can I just ask you a
Yeah.
question? Can I just,
Good question,
you
Jess.
keep using, sorry, I don't want to take over for
Yeah.
everyone, but you keep using the expression or the term full mouth rehabilitation. Could you just clarify?
Oh,
what
sure,
that means?
absolutely. So a lot, what ends up happening for a lot of patients who are different age groups have failing dentition. A lot of them need most of their teeth replaced. Some of them have dentures, some of them are failing, or they're just not happy with what it is. So a lot of times we have to remove most of their teeth, place implants, and then restore them with prosthetics.
And under one roof. So from the design of the smile itself, either from the structural design or the actual aesthetics of it, they don't leave the office. So they stay in one office to actually get all of the, from the design point of view to the actual surgical point of view, as well as the aesthetics. And the extra component that actually I think is probably one of the first ones in New Jersey that I know of, is they mill everything inside. They do 3D CAD scans, 3D design using the CAD/CAM technology. And they mill the teeth themselves without an outside lab. So everything's in.
Is it a
You as a
multi-visit,
med-
I'm sorry, is this a multi-visit type thing, or is this done in one?
It really depends on the patient. You know, as much as we can, we try to do this in the least amount of appointments. We have situations where the patient does come in and has this done in one visit. So there's a lot of pre-planning that's involved, but they end up getting their teeth, if they need to have them removed, implants placed, surgeries done in their teeth. They can leave with a full set of teeth in one day. So it's case dependent, but it's very typical.
I can see if a healthy patient comes in and they have the bone structure already, they don't have to do the grafting, or they don't need any more bone structure. They can do that in one setting. Unfortunately, that's where I come in, like Priscilla was about to ask me. In complicated patients with multiple comorbid conditions, they do need that optimization, medically speaking. If they smoke, they do these things. We do suggest 2 weeks prior to stop smoking and some a next level to the pre-operation.
Would you consider your process natural?
Absolutely, and I think that's what we're trying to definitely make sure that the board knows. The approach is, when we say natural, we don't use a lot of materials as far as grafting. Initially, you can use bone, you can allude to this, but you use bone instead of the actual plasma. Now we're more into the plasma because the technology of the BTI that I've also been to in Spain is actually, they have a clotting mechanism that actually wraps around the implant itself that already induces healing. And on top of that, you do separate the plasma from the blood, and that you can, instead of using, again, a graft, you use your own blood, the coagulated blood or plasma, into the surgical site, which promotes healing, natural healing, though, we keep speaking about.
And it's fortunate you're a medical doctor for those.
I think that was part of the plan.
One of the things that you've spoken about, basically relates to the layout.
Sure.
And we've mentioned to the board that the building is not being changed, that it's just the occupancy of the first floor. And one of the things that this board and the planning board in Millburn has been concerned about in their downtown vision plan is to have windows and leave it light and airy. So can you please explain to the board the layout that you designed, that Mr. Kaplan put down? And then I'm gonna go to the pictures, so that you can walk them through.
Sure, so everybody has a copy, right? So basically, this side of the building is all glass, this side as well. And this is the elevator that connects to the second floor. And the last third part towards this is the back of the Millburn, this is Millburn Ave. This part is concrete all throughout here. So basically, this L shape here is all clear. It goes through and through, as the original plan was for a restaurant. We are keeping the openness and the airy feel of the place. I believe you might have some photos. Oh, so Kapler is a they're a German company, they're very quality, they produce quality designs. Prior to med school, I also applied to design. I picked the other one. So this is the aesthetics that you can kind of see. Basically have high walls, high windows, you're keeping everything, like I mentioned, open. And everything else is this color palette actually that we did. It's very aesthetically pleasing. We even wanted to add fireplace in the living area, as we are in New Jersey. I would like to go in a place like that if I were to go to a dental office. But certainly adds on to the boutique style of the place. This is not your average dental practice that you go, as Priscilla mentioned, you go and have drill fill. This is where we would like to provide an experience, and especially in this part of New Jersey, where you go in and you actually get to enjoy the space. There's a recovery room that you can actually adjust the lighting, the ambient lighting, some music, to really encourage patients for their health. I mean, this is very important.
And of course.
Yes, absolutely. COVID is over, everyone's unmasking, and we need to experience that.
We gave the board these two pictures of the building.
Oh, is there any question?
And the windows that you're referring to.
Yeah, well, I can have a question. What I would suggest is if you're gonna refer to the Kapler floor plan, if you can just orient the board and I guess the public in terms of where Millburn Avenue is in relation to the front.
Oh, sure. So Millburn Avenue is actually on this side. This is Millburn Avenue,
And this
to the
is-
left side.
Right, so
And we'll orient the board with the photograph. At the Millburn side, you have 3 sets of windows facing Millburn Avenue, which will be,
I'm sorry, this there.
there's the reception.
No,
The reception.
reception's right there. Okay.
So that would be there. And then you have the side view of the building
Which is
with the windows would run along the side here to where the reception is.
Which side is S6?
The back side.
That side.
And you mentioned the laboratory, that would be in the back.
In the back.
That's in the back,
That's
that's just. if
It's not
you're-
visible
No, it's
to
all-
walking.
And that the entire set of windows that or approved by the planning board will remain.
Correct.
And they're not going to be covered with blinds and dark materials in order to obscure the windows.
So there will be some privacy coverings, but not entirely covered.
Okay?
More so just for the glare of the sun and just the, but it wouldn't obstruct looking into the building itself.
Well, but if you're, I see windows, if you're looking at the Google photos that you enclosed. And are folks gonna be able to look through those windows to see people being operated on?
No.
So there will be, I mentioned blinds if the patient is inside the room for privacy issue and compliance for HIPAA, but not at all times when there's a patient inside.
Do you have any information for the benefit of the board, based on just looking at this photograph that you enclosed, the Google image from May of 2022, and there's signage on the first floor for lease, medical, retail, restaurant. Do you have any information, testimony regarding efforts, marketing efforts, and demand for those various uses since this was approved back in 2018?
Just to be clear, this building is owned by somebody else right now. We don't own the building, we're contract purchasers. These notices, advertisements, and the marketing for this building was done for the owner.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is that this is a D1 use variance application, and you have to meet the positive criteria and the negative criteria. And one of the considerations for the board to think about is why this use as opposed to permitted use. And the typical question, that's why I'm asking it, is efforts to have the space used for permitted use and why the proposed use is a better alternative than the permitted use.
Well, I would suggest that we would have a planner come in and testify to that. I'm trying to thumb through the documents because we had these certificates of occupancy for the premises submitted. And the building has been occupied, has been completed and available for occupancy for well over a year and has been vacant.
Since 2020.
The 2018 resolution, I believe that the landlord, and if I could find the certificate of occupancy, I believe that the certificates of occupancy were issued in 2020. And this building has been sitting there essentially empty. And my client was approached by a broker and said, might you be interested in this, considering you have to go before a board to get the approval. And that's why we're here, because they like Millburn.
I'm just asking whether you
No,
have any evidence, and it sounds like the
I have
answer is
nothing.
no.
Right.
Right, no.
But I
interesting that
do
the
want,
building
I
owner
do
is
want
here.
to find
Right.
I do want to find the certificates of occupancy, because that would give you an idea of when the building was completed.
We understand that, we're aware of when it was completed. Our interest is in what efforts were made as to, marketing this building to an approved use as opposed to.
I would have to say that as a contract purchaser, we did not ask the owner to delineate for us everything that he's done. I do know that he had a realtor. I do know that that's how my client found the property. And we do know that it's been vacant. And I would suspect that you sit back and look at it, a restaurant in that space with only 20 spaces for parking. The resolution that I provided to you shows that they were supposed to get at least 7 others, and that the overflow was to go to the street. And I have to believe that restaurants weren't interested in investing that kind of money in an infrastructure for a restaurant and not being able to have the clientele park. But we also are suggesting to the board that this use is complementary and is within, and you'll hear from our planner, within the concepts that the board, that Milburn has espoused with regard to its downtown vision plan, and that it fits clearly within that design idea, because it isn't, number one, it isn't a standard dental office. It is state of the art, and it is a medical service, and it's across the street from a medical service. Across the street, there's an eye surgery center. And I don't know if they have complete
Okay,
parking.
why don't we do this? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. If that's gonna be provided, that evidence is gonna be provided by the planner.
Yes,
Let the planner do that instead of.
I will, but I did want you to just understand the area and why they became attracted to the area. It was through a realtor who introduced them to the property. So again, you're asking me if they made an effort. They obviously had a realtor engaged. It was obviously listed, because that's how they got to it. And you can confirm that. Were you consulting with a realtor looking for a space?
Yes.
Yes.
And did the realtor bring you to this vacant property in Milburn?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't just stumble on it by driving down the street? No, it was listed.
Quite some
And,
time, yeah.
and they came in. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the board concerning your practice that you would like them to understand with regard to your intended use?
No, I believe that was, what we explained. I think it's quite clear. Unless you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Yeah, let's talk about intensity of use here.
Sure.
We have 5 rooms
Mhm.
currently that look like they're either set up for operating or some sort of, patient type use. And on top of that, we have rooms that are now designated as future potential rooms to be used. So such as the one that's currently using as a consult, that says future OP. And then you have another one that says staff, which would be future consultation. So it looks like there's a lot of room for expansion here or potential change in usage. So let's talk about how many people would be inside this facility at any given time. I mean, obviously you have 5 rooms here. Staff, what are we talking about? What do we got?
So more or less, it's like eight staff, 2 doctors, including myself, 2 assistants, receptionist, hygienist, CAD/CAM technician, a ceramist, that's right, and more or less 5 patients that would be seen maximum. The room that you're alluding to, it says future op. It's plumbed. It'll be plumbed for an op, for a future op. That's just a consult room, just like having a consultation. Back here is a future consult photo. That's where right now is just for it's for staff, for staff, and later on just for photography. That's what that is. So at any given time, there's a maximum of 5 patients. Waiting room only has 6 chairs. I'm sorry, 4 chairs. So it's not a high volume. It would be total between 8 staff and 5 patients, more or less, 13 or so, fully occupied.
And plus the 2 of you.
No, that's the two is 2
8 staff,
dentists.
5 patients, 4 waiting.
8 staff, 5 patients.
There's 13 total that they would anticipate.
Yeah, and then we have room for 4 in the waiting room. I mean, that's their driver, or we wouldn't be overflowing.
Okay, so you're included in the staff.
Correct.
And based upon your ordinance square footage, they require 20 spaces.
I mean, what's the square footage?
Roughly 3,000 square feet.
2906.
Is it?
Oh, 2906 here.
Is this occupying one level or 2 levels?
Just one level.
Just one level.
Yeah, the
3,000 is the one.
Correct.
Yeah, the residents, if I wasn't clear, the residential apartments upstairs will remain untouched. The tenants will be, have their leases renewed.
If I could ask, in terms of deliveries, on what frequency and what types of deliveries would you anticipate on a regular basis? And on what frequency would you expect them?
Usually when we order materials or anything that we need for the office, once every 2 weeks, more like a UPS truck. I believe that there's space in the back that has a entrance back there for, to receive the deliveries. So UPS, Amazon, more or less twice a month.
Medical.
I'm sorry, every 2 weeks or so.
What about medical waste?
Medical waste?
Operating, yeah.
Yes, that would also be picked up. We're talking syringes, that kind of thing. So yes, that's
Standard.
I would say,
It's like picked up.
I would say once every 2 months. Yeah, that's what we currently have in the Clark office. And that's higher volume.
What type of truck?
That's more or less smaller than a garbage truck. I think that's from the New Jersey Department of Health. It's maybe like.
Equivalent to a FedEx.
Correct,
delivery truck.
correct, right. They come in and do that.
Can I ask some questions? I'm sorry.
Go
So I have a few questions.
Sure.
Thanks in advance for answering them. So you said you were going to be providing sedation at this location,
Yes.
correct? Will there be flammable gases on site, like compressed flammable gases such as oxygen or nitrous oxide?
There will be oxygen, nitrous oxide in the storage area. So that's going to be totally, it's walled off. It's a concrete setting.
I will just orient you on the.
Yes,
the
sorry.
paper, so it's on the Essex side, on the top right.
I'm sorry. Yep. So in the storage area, everything's going to be placed in there as far as like oxygen, nitrous oxide. So the tanks and everything are going to be in its own compartment, and then the rooms will have it's like a delivery system. So that would be relatively safe.
This area was actually a nice surprise, because it was built for a restaurant, so the
Storage.
storages are outside.
And will you be taking other construction measures to ensure the safety of the flammable compressed gases that will be in tanks?
That's all going to be handled by the distributors and whoever, like the licensed professionals to be bringing this in and then servicing it. Yes.
Okay, and then will you have, on the topic of sedation, will you have drugs that create sleepiness, anti-anxiety,
Yes.
and amnesia?
Yes, it's just a light sedation, so it's not full, not complete sedation where you need a machine to try to help you breathe. But yes, there are going to be drugs. We have a license for this, so everything's going to be locked up and stored away.
And what kind of drugs will you be administering? Can you name some names?
Versed mainly. That's the safest one that's been used.
Will you be using fentanyl?
If we need to, yes, in low doses.
Okay, and midazolam, I'm sorry, Versed.
Yes, Versed and midazolam, correct.
Okay, and you'll have safe storage of those, presumably?
Yes, everything's locked up and accounted for, absolutely.
Okay, and you have procedures for that?
Yes.
And you already defined regenerative medicine for us, but talk to me a little bit about what you mean when you say you're going to separate the plasma, because that is definitely something that doesn't happen in a restaurant.
No, absolutely not. So what typically happens is we do draw the patient's blood, 4 to 6 vials, depending on the level of surgery they need. We have a centrifuge, basically that the carbules, it goes in there. It takes about 8 to 10 minutes for everything to separate. So then what we use is we pipette everything off, all the nutrients out of the blood, and then we treat it in a way where we can do it, mix it with bone, patient's bone, and then re-inject instituted into the patient's mouth for regenerative procedures.
So there'll be extraction of blood and handling of blood, which is
Yes.
part of what you offer,
Correct.
but it is something, again, that is one of the things I'm hung up on is it's a business, a B4 district where specifically medical office, ambulatory care centers are not permitted. So I'm trying to come to grips with what are the hazards, why is this not approved? And there has to be a reason. One assumes that the ordinance and the zone code was written considering that there are characteristics that perhaps, but anyway, that's, I'm trying to come to terms with that. And environmental, you're probably going to have some dental amalgam with that. Will you?
No, I mean, we don't use amalgam. If anything, what ends up happening is there will be an amalgam separator placed into the filtration to the water system. So everything gets filtered, and then the state comes in yearly to basically recycle that. So that definitely gets trapped. It doesn't go back into the water.
We've got an aerosolized amalgam. Is that an option?
Aerosolized, we have vacuums to take that. So no, we're very safe and cautious.
Any
with
silver,
that.
mercury?
No, we don't use that.
Okay, and disposal of gauzes, tissues, syringes, IV tubing.
That's all medical waste. So that's going to be all handled by, we have a medical waste company that
Okay, and
handles all that.
I'm almost done. Sorry,
Sure.
thanks for answering all of these. You said something about there will be a CT scan or
Yes.
X-ray machines.
Yes, it's a CAT scan. Basically, it's I'll go back here to where it's going to be positioned. So it's a low dose CAT scan. It'll be basically right over here. So next to the bathroom, next to the staff room. So it's towards the back. It's a low dose 3D CAT scan.
When you
machine.
say low dose, it's less than a full X-ray.
So if you go to your dentist, you get a full set of X-rays. If you ever needed them, it's less than that. Really, it's very low dose radiation, so it's quite safe. Definitely not. It's a fraction of what you would get in the hospital as far as CAT scans are concerned. So dentistry's made us a long way in that. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
and there'll be some chemicals and disinfectants related to your work.
We do use it's more like I guess it's a different level of bleach, Birax it's called, just wipes, sanitary wipes, that kind of thing. But as far as any other caustic solutions, no.
And any procedures that will protect, because you did say the residents will still be in the building, which will be
Upstairs,
presumably directly above
Mhm.
the machinery. And how do you ensure that those residents who are living there and sleeping there will be safe from some of the machinery that will be located in your office?
So there's the milling machines, a 3D printer. I would say your blender is probably louder than these machines. They're air compressed. They're very quiet. As far as noises, the elevator is probably noisier than what we use in the office.
Specifically for safety, the CT scan and the X-ray machine.
That is walled off with the New Jersey regulations. That's you just need to be 3 feet, three or more feet away from it. The walls are usually double. They're twice as thick as far as like plywood and sheetrock. So that's very safe.
Does that exist in this building, those safety structural components that you?
Oh, everything's gonna be built out. So whatever we need, the construction company will manage it and do that. And we'll ensure that that's in place.
Yeah, there would
It's
be
vacant.
permits from contractors who are acclimated to this type of practice. And the construction would be reviewed not only by construction, but by the Department of Health. And it would demonstrate the compliances and the requirements with the State Department of Health.
Okay.
Now, you're
Thank you.
concerned about upstairs, so you're looking for them to have a second layer of sheetrock above as well as on the walls that the state requires.
Okay, so there'd be special considerations for structure
Absolutely.
built in to protect the residents
Correct.
that are directly above here. And just last question, alarms by nature are meant to be alarming. So presumably if you're doing surgery, you're going to have alarms
Yes.
and noise level.
Alarms, when you say alarms during the surgery or alarms like a fire alarm, just to.
Alarms during the surgery. What kind of alarms? I'll ask you. I don't want to put words in
Vitals,
your mouth.
just taking vitals, more like a beeping. We could adjust the volumes on the EKG.
No
So,
more than a cell phone ringing, I would presume.
no more than a cell phone ringing. Yeah, correct.
I mean, I work in the hospital and I hear it in my sleep, but that's different.
Yeah.
But that's a different alarm, I think that you're alluding to, like an ICU, when somebody gets out of bed, there's a little bit of a ring, that's probably the only thing you would hear.
When you're working on the patient, is there machinery to monitor there?
Yes, the basically the monitor for EKG, the oxygen, everything like that. So that's all taken care of for sure.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Let's talk, I don't think we've established this yet, hours of operation.
Oh, thank you. Monday to Friday, 8 to 6, and Saturdays, 8 to 2.
Talked about contract purchase. How's that different from a regular tenancy, and what are the different rights? I mean, I don't know if it's the right question for you, but was there a reason for going that route versus regular tenancy?
You mean like as
As
a
a
You mean
contract
renting
purchaser.
versus purchasing? Is that what I'm understanding?
This is a contract purchaser. You guys are contract purchasers. The
Yes.
owner is separate.
No. So basically what they're saying, and you can correct me, is that they have a contract to purchase the building,
Correct.
of which they're gonna operate out of the first floor. But the contract is contingent on whether it's due diligence, and that would include getting approvals from this board. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Correct.
This is the last piece of that contract.
And that would entail both floors or just the ground floor?
So we're buying the whole building.
The whole building,
So
yes.
the variance is only for the first floor, the second floor would be left as is.
Mhm.
The tenants will be as is.
So you're gonna be the landlord for the tenants.
Correct.
Question. You do propose adding, with the addition, new second story, so are you gonna is this,
Oh,
am I
no,
reading
that's
this correctly?
That's the old one.
That's
The
the old
second
one.
story exists already.
Okay,
Yes, that exists.
thank you.
How much emergency work do you do?
I'm sorry?
How much emergency work do you do?
I'm an infectious disease doctor.
I'm sorry, how much
Emergency.
emergency work would be done here?
Oh,
Any
emer-
emergency?
It would be it would be, as needed, we would try to control that. They're more scheduled, but if we need to come in on a Saturday or after hours, we could accommodate that, but nothing very typical where it happens all the time, no. Yes.
So during your hours, about 8 to 6 or 8 to 2, how many people a day come in? Right? At one time, you said you have 5 plus 4, but if you have a rotation of
I think we were talking about maximum at one time, if every patient who's sedated has to have a driver, but
I mean, we would probably have 10 to 12. This is like a maximum of 15 patients
a day.
a day, let's say roughly, unless we're doing longer procedures, and of course that wouldn't allow for that.
With a longer procedure, you'd have less patients.
Absolutely. It might take 6 hours for one patient. So there might be days where you just have 1 to 2 patients, 3 patients. So, for me, and then the other dentist, a few patients as well, but no, not high volume.
And do you have an existing practice that's akin to this practice?
I have an existing practice in Clark. It's not this particular boutique style. It's more higher volume, I would say, but yes. So I do have one. in Clark.
And so is the goal to have some of your patients in Clark come to this facility, or are you
No.
trying to attract brand new patients?
Correct.
And what's your, part of my comment, what's your sweet spot in terms of demographic, age, things of that nature for this boutique type of practice?
so I actually asked him, what's our avatar? It would be us.
Right. Us or
Working, very busy, takes 2 weeks off a month, a year, I mean, very busy, so you cut down on the number of visits, you cut down on numbers of days that you take off from work, because he can basically do a lot of the main procedures in one day, and you go back, you have your full set of teeth instead of the multiple visits that we talked to.
Are we talking all different ages? Or?
So basically, as far as like the ideal patient who would need, say, a full mouth reconstruction, it would be more of someone, it really varies, but between 50 and 60 years old, more of an adult. Yes, I have cases that someone's in their 30s that needs this type of work, but more or less, it would be 50 to 60 range, 65.
You've also had 70 to 80-year-old.
Of course, yeah, but I would say more or less, it's that age group.
So I'm super curious about the demand for this. You guys are making a big investment.
Yes.
You must have a sense of the demand that exists.
So we had a friend that moved to actually Short Hills, maybe during COVID, 2021. And he looked for a dentist in the area. He wasn't willing to travel far. And he said, I have not seen an office. He came from New York, an office in the area that I actually would want to stay in. So that was after we obviously had all the plans already. And it really does ring a bell to us because the boutique practice that we are talking about eliminates some patients actually wanting to go to New York just to get dental procedures done. And I know some people who do that because they can't find what they want to find in New Jersey, in Millburn, or surrounding towns.
Have you done any kind of like demand study or feasibility, or you just kind of, you just know because you're.
Yeah, we just kind of go with our gut feeling a lot of times and based on, what I think the place needs.
And of course, I mean, there are, for the demographic that we described, it's more and more, there's a need. So for just like New Jersey as a whole, there's high demand for this type of treatment.
Yeah, we definitely did not do a feasibility study on this one.
Right.
You're buying a building, you're.
No,
you're
more or
going-
less,
You designed it before you even came to us. I mean, it's an investment, but we could say no. And
Absolutely.
your plans go out the
Right.
window.
No,
Of course.
So do you look for space, because we're talking about less than 3,000 square feet, do you look for medical space in Millburn or the surrounding Essex County area?
Yeah. Mhm.
And what was the issue, if there was any, with regard to that space as opposed to this particular space?
So you want
Um,
to closer to us in different towns?
Right, we've looked at different towns. It was one, needed to have the feel and vibe of what we're trying to achieve. Of course, you needed to have ample space, parking, and of course, we enjoy, coming here. We've visited many times. We lived in Springfield for years ago after moving out to Bedminster, but we really enjoy it.
Like if you could speak about the Chatham.
So we tried getting we were interested in building in Chatham. It just didn't work out. It was an older bank. Everything was dilapidated. The amount of construction that we needed to do, and it just, at the end of the day, we just said, it's not what we're looking for. This basically just fit exactly what we want. So,
So is this facility an upgrade to what you have in Clark?
Absolutely.
And will that continue while you're doing this? So it will be sort of parallelly run, or are you going to?
No, the Clark office will continue to operate. I have a few other dentists that work with me, so it'll continue moving along. Of course, I'll go for consultations, but more or less, this was the primary focus.
Similar services that you offer there, and that will continue?
Yes, correct. So same thing, just at a different level.
So you do offer these procedures that you're proposing, these types of procedures at the Clark location. And what sorts of demand have you perceived or have you experienced for these procedures in Clark?
For patients needing full mouth rehabilitation, we're talking 50 plus patients a year. So that's just full mouth. There's patients who need smaller surgeries that we see on a weekly basis. So yes.
And patients do drive from.
I have patients coming from Pennsylvania. This morning I had a patient from Pennsylvania, from New York, from all over. So yes.
So you've used the term boutique a number of times. I'm just curious what you mean by that in this context.
Can I speak to
Yeah,
that,
please.
Mr. Rosen? So my envisioning of this whole thing is really to have an experience. I myself never went to a dentist before I met my husband.
Lucky.
Because I was always afraid. I mean, who wants to sit there, be vulnerable? So I wanted to kind of guide this experience. You go in, you actually don't have to write some things. You just go on your tab and it's an experience. And you have a water bar, because apparently that's even mandated by the state. But you have a water bar, you can relax, and you don't have to wait for hours to be seen by a dentist. And that's why when we say boutique, it really is an experience that you want to provide to your patient.
Just a question, sorry, I'm the question girl tonight. Are your, particularly with your, the biologic approach, I think that was in your statement, are those things supported by medical journals, dental journals? And is it covered by insurance?
Absolutely. It's FDA approved for oral surgery, for orthopedic surgery. So yes, and as far as covered by insurance, medical insurance, the dental insurance that doesn't cover this. It's not insurance, that's another topic. Medical insurance, it varies really. So it's more like, but it is FDA approved. As far as insurance, I can't speak to every insurance, there's just so many.
So many of your clients will be paying cash for this.
Correct.
Thank you.
So I can just differentiate because on the medical side, it's an insurance. You have an insurance. On the dental side, you have a discount. And that's how I've always gone to dentists before you. It's a discount versus an actual coverage for what you
Right,
need.
if you're gonna go.
So is that, I know it doesn't.
You're talking about
answer
out of network, you mean?
Yeah, the network or not a network, it's so with dental insurance, it's more or less, it's a contract more than true medical coverage as your medical insurance, so it's a whole nother.
So what you do a medical diagnosis when someone says they need a full rebuild?
Sure.
Is this where it's a medical procedure, meaning that someone will say, go to your doctor says you need this done, and it's considered to be a medical procedure?
So it can be applied to your medical insurance for coverage and benefits. So if there's anything that you have infections, you have anything that's going to affect your whole body as systemically, then yes, there's an opportunity to have that as for medical, for sure, absolutely.
Do you do accident reconstruction?
No, that's to my friends who do that at the university. That's a whole nother ballgame.
It's another 10 years.
That's different. Yeah, when you need a whole team and hospital for that.
Any other questions for doctors?
Very fascinating.
Do you have another witness?
I just wanted to get back to the question. When you were first shown this property by the Realtor, that was in September of 2022?
I can't recall exactly.
Either right, it's late,
It was fallish, right?
maybe
Yes.
late summer, early fall.
Yeah, I've located the certificate of occupancy. It was January of 2022, so the building was vacant for 9 months when they were showed the building by a Realtor.
Okay, so do you want to, if this is going to be part of your evidence, are we going to mark this? Should we mark this?
I believe that I submitted it as part of the package, but you can mark it if there's any
Why don't we,
unsurety.
do we have it?
I don't recall seeing this.
Well, let's just be safe, then we'll mark it as A1. So A1 with today's date, which is January 23rd, 2023. And it consists of one page identified as certificate of occupancy for block 704, lot 5. And it says new building mixed use, certificate of occupancy, and the date is January 19th, 2022. So
And then I can represent to the board that all 4 apartments are in fact occupied.
and it actually states, certificate of common second floor apartments only. So, and you said
That's
that,
because the bottom isn't built out, the bottom is vacant.
and so you were shown this space when?
September of 2022.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions? Counselor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Planner, Lindsay Knight.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm good, how are you guys?
Good.
Sorry,
Okay.
Raise your right hand, solemnly swear affirm the testimony you're gonna give tonight's truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Lindsay Knight, 34 Park Ave, Lyndhurst, New Jersey.
you please put your credentials on the record for this board?
Sure. So I'm a professional planner in the state of New Jersey, as well as a planner through the American Institute of Certified Planners. I'm in good standing with both of my licenses. I have over 10 years of experience in planning. I have a master's in urban and regional planning from the University of Colorado. I've appeared in front of boards all across New Jersey, most recently Fairlawn, Paramus, Woodcliff Lake, further down in this area. I previously, before my tenure at Neglia, I worked for the town of Westfield in-house for them. I served on their zoning board as their planner. I worked for the town of Bridgewater. I've worked in Belmar, all over New Jersey.
How many years have you been a planner?
I've been a planner for over 10 years.
And your licenses are current?
They're current, I'm in good standing.
And your employer is
The Neglia Group
from
Lyndhurst, New Jersey.
Thank you. Qualifications are accepted. That's great.
Thank you. So I think you guys are pretty acquainted with the site, the location, so I'll bypass kind of my whole background of the location of it, but I will give you guys kind of an idea of what is abutting the property. So as was stated earlier, this is going to be in the B4 Central Business Zone, which does not permit this use. So obviously that is why we are here tonight, to seek that D1 variance. However, right across the street, it abuts the RO, Residential Office Zone, where there are a couple of doctors' offices. In addition, to the north, across Essex Street, there's going to be those railroad tracks, as well as to the west, we have the Footnote Retail Shoe Store, and to the east, the Professional Audio Consultants. So that kind of just gives you a general idea of the businesses and what's located around the site. So the site is kind of particularly suited for this use based on that location. It's on the outskirts of your downtown area plan, which, as you had stated, does not permit this use, but towards that end of the area, it is abutting that residential office zone, as well. It kind of serves as that buffer between the core downtown as well as those residential uses.
Lindsay, I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me just get some clarification. When you say the RO zone, are medical offices permitted on the first floor in the RO zone?
I would seek to say yes, as there are medical offices on the first floor directly across Milburn Ave. There's the Beautiful Smiles Dental Group, as well as, I believe it's at Catty Corner. There's another medical group. The Atlantic Health Group, yeah. And then there, I believe there's,
First spot.
Not permitted use in ROs.
Go ahead, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no,
That's
completely
important.
fine. No, that's important. So it's kind of on the edge of that downtown. So it is creating that buffer between these different uses and kind of easing your way into the core downtown, as well as easing your way back out towards the residential. So this kind of serves the public good because it's filling that vacancy of a spot that's in your downtown, that's leading to your downtown. And it's kind of getting people from the outskirts of town into your downtown. So you're not seeing empty storefronts, which I know actually since COVID, I hate always blaming everything on COVID. I know when I previously worked at Westfield, getting those vacancies filled has been quite difficult, as like retail, a lot has gone towards online retailers. So in addition, the plan was previously approved to have that restaurant, which is a much more intense use. As you can see, the parking requirement was much higher. There's going to be a higher turnover of traffic. And in both the downtown area vision plan and the 2018 master plan reexamination report, it was indicated that there was a lack of parking spaces conveniently located to where people needed to be. So not only is this site going to completely contain the parking on site, those extra parking spaces that were required previously by that resolution are no longer going to be needed. So those parking spaces that were possibly going to be taken from the parking garages, the surface parking, as well as on-street parking, are no longer going to be taken from this use, as all the parking is going to be contained on that site. So that's going to open up parking for people to be able to hopefully park closer to those uses that they need. Also within the downtown area vision plan, it recognizes an evolving retail trends and the need to be flexible. We see that a lot with retail trends changing, the experiential retail that's becoming more popular, and finding ways to utilize these spaces in untraditional ways. You see things like those selfie spots that have become really popular that maybe 5-10 years ago, we had no clue what a selfie spot was gonna be, that you're gonna have people pay money to just take pictures in front of random setup booths. So in this fashion, this type of medical office is a unique use for a medical office. It's not something that may have been contemplated previously, especially considering the previous amendments were both in 2019 to the ordinance, as well as again in 2021 to add additional uses. So maybe during that time, this is such a new use, this, as Dr. and Dr. Isabella have said, their friend couldn't even find this use around here, and it was something they were actively seeking. But it's something that maybe right now has only been located in those big cities where those newer uses are going to be. And now that we've had this influx of people from moving from New York City into the suburbs, these uses that were demanded in the city now need to kind of make their way out to the suburbs. So this is an opportunity to bring a unique use, be a little flexible with those uses as the downtown vision plan kind of sought to do, as well as bring some people from outside of Millburn and the Short Hills area into your downtown to use these other businesses and hopefully attract more businesses. So onto the 2018 Master Plan Reexamination Report. The goal number 1 is to encourage appropriate land uses that promote the character of the township as a small suburb of the highest quality. And the objective 1.02 is to promote the appropriate mix of downtown development in downtown and other commercial areas. So dentist or a medical office is definitely going to be a use that's going to be used by people and needed by people in Millburn and Short Hills. It's also going to be a compatible use with the surrounding areas. As I said earlier, right across Millburn Ave is going to be that RO district, which does permit those medical uses. And then in the recommendations for the 2018 Master Plan re-exam, one of the recommendations was to review all non-residential zones to determine which are most appropriate for medical uses outside of that CMO zone. So this would be a great opportunity to explore one of these medical uses outside of the CMO zone. You clearly have been looking since 2018 for ways to do that, and maybe this is a way to kind of test the waters to see if this type of use on the outskirts of the downtown can work without taking away from that vision for your downtown. Finally, another recommendation was to consider permitting office uses, including shared offices on the ground floor, provided that the same requirements for transparency and active storefronts are met. While this is not an office, as you can see though from the interior design plans that were distributed with the application, the Isabellas have really put a lot of thought into creating an open, transparent office space. I know a lot of downtowns get concerned about having those offices, having doctors' offices, because you're concerned about the blinds, not having those active storefronts, and you want people to be walking on your sidewalks, looking into the storefronts, going all across the town. So by having these beautiful interiors that are quite transparent, bright, and open, it's going to adhere to those transparency requirements. So the proposed use is going to be a valuable addition to the Millburn downtown. It's going to serve the public good. It's going to promote the general welfare. In addition, it's going to be filling a space that's been vacant for some time. So I'll go into the permitted principal uses for the B4 zone. Once again, as I stated earlier, was amended in 2019 with the additional uses being added in 2021. Therefore, this type of technology for a dentist use may not have been contemplated, it may not have been thought about. I mean, the Isabellas only recently came up with this idea, so it's not really going to be something, it's a unique use, so it's not something that can technically be written down and be a catch-all for all dentist uses. This is a new technology, it's a state-of-the-art office, and it's a really great opportunity for Millburn to bring in this unique use that's not anywhere else. You can have a business in your downtown that no other downtowns have, and it's going to be attracting people to this new unique experience of a dentist's office. As Dr. Isabella said, it's going to create a unique experience in your dentist's office, right? How many times do you go to the dentist's office and it's really sterile, it's not welcoming? The Isabellas are taking that extra step to make this feel more like you're becoming a member of their medical group as opposed to just being a patient. So with that being said, we hope that the board can look favorably on this and see that this use is unique, and that it is in line with both of the downtown vision plan as well as the 2018 master plan reexamination.
Can you give the board the statutory analysis of benefit and detriment?
So the benefit, how it'll inherently
The
outweigh.
use variance, I'm sorry.
Let
Can you
me-
give the
so-
board the benefit of?
So to meet the positive criteria
Sure.
and the negative criteria for use variance application, which requires 5 affirmative votes, the applicant has the burden of proof to demonstrate the positive criteria and the negative criteria. For the positive criteria, we talk about particular suitability of this site for the use. So as council alluded to, why don't you touch upon how this application meets the positive criteria of particular suitability of this particular site?
Sure, so as I stated earlier, this site is particularly suited based on both the location as well as having the parking completely contained on site. It's located on the outskirts of the downtown area, downtown vision plan. It's located directly adjacent to the RO zone, so it's gonna be located near compatible uses, similar office hours, similar flow of traffic, as well as, once again, going back to the parking, it has the parking completely self-contained, which is gonna be beneficial for a medical office, especially of this type, where you can have your parking right there as opposed to having to walk around downtown.
Is there any detriment to Milburn that you have found in your analysis of this project?
No, I don't find any detriment to this. I find that if anything, that this is only going to enhance and fill that vacancy.
I have no further questions of the witness.
Thank you. Any of the board have any questions for planner?
So you.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead,
John,
Sean.
go ahead.
So just to clarify on the
Yeah.
parking spots, you mentioned it's all contained. There are 4 residents on top. So that's 1 spot per resident is what I heard.
Sure.
How many more additional spots are available for the incoming patients?
Okay, so there's 25 parking spaces total. 4 will be for the residents, and then there's the 20 remaining for the office. Those are required per the zoning ordinance. That leaves 1 last spot, and that will be used, which I believe for their visitor parking.
This question. So someone made the comment that people who are sedated will need a driver, designated driver, because obviously if you've had sedation, you can't drive. Where will they park and how will that work out with the parking?
That will be part of the 20 required parking.
All right, so presumably the person who's getting dental work will not be driving. You'll,
Yeah,
Right.
I can't.
They'd have to be dropped off and then picked up.
The doctor accounted for a patient that would be knocked out. I need a driver. Probably would be a long procedure, would be less patients, and there would be sufficient parking. But that he did the numbers and they came out to 20, which is what your ordinance says.
Any other questions?
I have one more question.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry, and I'm sorry, and
Go ahead.
I believe I'm
Yeah, I
probably
wanted to-
repeating a question, but
I was just gonna say, do you wanna go over the math, because you said there were eight staff,
yeah,
and
I'm satisfied about the
5
parking.
patients, I'm sorry.
You had mentioned that it's a boutique experience, which leads to the positive criteria. Could you, again, in sort of layman terms, tell me why this is a unique, positive experience that wouldn't be obtained at other dentists, perhaps?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think first there's the aesthetics of the office, right? So this office is designed in a way by the Zabellas to create a much warmer experience than your traditional medical office, which sometimes feels sterile, cold, uninviting. So they've created a space that's open, airy, and bright. That's going to be welcoming to those using the space. So that's going to be the first. The second is it's going to create from the outside that active storefront where you can see into the waiting area, which most doctors' offices are pretty closed off. You can't see in. So that's why another unique aspect is why, especially for a downtown, they're going to make sure that that front area is open and available, and it's not going to be closed off. It's still going to be welcoming to those on the street level.
Anything else? You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question for you, Rob, actually. So if we were to say we were gonna approve this very unique type of medical office for the Sabellas? I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask it anyway.
No, I'll just keep nodding.
You keep nodding,
That'll work out
right? And we approved this very unique, special kind of boutique thing. And then for whatever reason, at some point, the Sabella's business exits. Someone else can come in with any other kind of medical office use now because we've given that approval?
The answer is no.
Oh,
Because one of the proofs, at least that you've heard so far, if you deem to approve this, is that this is a very unique use. And part of the negative criteria for a D1 use variance for commercial use is that the applicant has the burden to reconcile how it happened that the master plan doesn't contemplate this use, but yet the applicant thinks this is the greatest use ever, in essence, in my words. And so if they present the proofs and the board feels that they've met their burden of proof and they get 5 affirmative votes and they get the approval, it's based on the fact that, oh, this is a unique use and parking and other factors, et cetera. But if my opinion would be is that if this property was converted to a general dentistry use, which would result in, based on the doctor's own sworn testimony, more of turnover, more of potential traffic impact, especially in consideration of the fact that you have residences upstairs, that you would probably want that new user to come back to the board for, in essence, an amended application, if not a new application.
Right.
Even for a dental use, even if you're going dental to dental, whether you want to call this more of an oral surgery use, et cetera.
right, so you're saying that that would be required, that would be necessary?
Yes, that if there was a different type of use from the testimony and application evidence presented, my recommendation would be that future user would have to come back to the board.
Mhm.
Even though, so the board understands, variances typically run with the land. So if they found a oral surgeon and someone performing internal medicine for the next thousands of years, and there was a comment made earlier, oh, well, we're gonna own this, I think the word was in perpetuity. Well, that's incorrect, because they may not own it in perpetuity, but they could sell it to somebody who has the exact same practice or close enough practice, and that could continue forever.
That's what I was going to ask next.
I would represent, just in addressing your question, is that while council is correct, the use normally runs with the land. This isn't a setback or coverage or physical situation that you can't change. But this applicant is coming before you for their application and would accept not only, I think it is firmly in the law, but I would accept a condition that the use variance be relegated to their practice, and that in the future, if they decided to move out of New Jersey, that any other occupant of that building, even if it's the same practice, should come back before the board. It should run with the person.
No.
Yeah.
That's legally incorrect. The right answer is that variances run with the land, runs with the property. So if I were lucky enough to become a physician and I would like this practice and operate this practice and buy this practice and operate it the exact same way, other than maybe coming in for, a site plan review, the use variance itself runs with the land. That is why use variances are granted sparingly, because they are a big deal, because they could run, the use itself can run with the land forever. It's not that, and it's very rare that you limit via a condition that the use or that the variance granted is limited to that particular person or those particular people. That is not what the law provides. The law provides that the use variance runs with the land.
So now
And I
I'm
think somebody's
Right.
acknowledging that I'm correct.
Speaking of-
Well, now I'm confused.
Yes. Yeah,
Like that
we did it.
contradiction you said the first time.
No.
I'm getting
if you want to come in, say, with a dental practice, just general dental practice into this building after, say, this was approved, okay? They're gonna have to come back in for a use variance again, okay?
Because it's different
Not the
enough?
same business,
It's
Okay.
a different use.
right?
I see.
In theory.
So if someone comes in with
Okay.
this particular use with a surgery center that does this type of thing where they actually sell,
They do exactly this,
right,
then you
they
don't.
sell the business,
Yeah.
Okay.
someone's
they operate
purchasing-
exactly as it is,
Exactly.
other than they're fine.
Okay.
If anything changes, they're back in front of us. That's almost the case with every use variance that's been granted.
Well, I assume it did.
Yeah.
But I think I was thinking of it more broadly, dental, than just this. So I get it.
Doesn't Melbourne have a change of occupant requirement for the planning board?
No,
You don't?
No change of tenancy.
No, just a lot of municipalities are adopting.
That's why the focus is on the use, the particular use that's being proposed here, based on the sworn testimony.
any other questions?
Can I just say that, I mean, have we clearly defined what the use is?
Right.
So that, because this sounds like dentistry, I mean, I realize it's much more specific than what you want to do, which would be the basis for us even approving this, I think. But have we, in the record, made it clear enough that that is the specific use for which we would be approving?
Yeah, what I have taken, I believe, copious notes on is this proposed use, which is in essence, full mouth rehabilitation, right?
Yeah.
Is that accurate? As terms of the use as compared to my dentist, who's a general dentist, or an oral surgeon who does.
Correct. You are correct.
Right? Thank you.
That works.
Any other questions?
But don't regular dentists do full mouth rehabilitation?
Sure can, but you usually work with a team of different dentists. I mean, there are.
I apologize.
Yeah,
Doctor, just go to the microphone.
I'm so sorry, I
Only
didn't.
because we don't have a court reporter tonight.
Sure. Yes, not everyone is capable of doing it. But yes, that there are teams of dentists. There are certain high volume clinics that do have a very high volume of patient base that yes, they can do that. Not to say I'm the only one that's qualified to do this in the state of New Jersey. That yes, there are many dentists that can do this, but in particularly not with this technology and these systems. As I work very closely with the owner who developed everything, we know who uses what throughout the state and the country. So
Can I follow up with that?
Mhm.
I'm sorry, we're digging down on this one, just trying to determine what is unique about your practice.
Mhm.
So other dentists do total mouth rehabilitation, but what you do that is different is the technology. And that is the plasma,
With
using the plasma.
Right, and it's, these particular type of implants, bone surgery, so it's minimally invasive way of doing this. And so it's less filler, toxic, or non-natural products, basically, to rehabilitate the patient.
And can other dentists learn this in the United States, or it's unique to
course.
Spain?
Well, for right now, it's mainly in Spain and Europe, but that's, in the future, I think that they will find a way to, learn this. But yes, a lot of dentists have traveled there particularly. for this.
And you'll be doing extractions or part of this?
Correct. This is part of the process of doing this type of casework.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anything else?
Does that clarify it for you as to why this is a different, it was your question that started it. I'm just checking to see if you
Yeah, no, I
understand
think
why
that makes
it's
sense.
not a dentist's office or a doctor's office. It's a very unique.
And even if a dentist did do total mouth rehabilitation, they wouldn't be able to do other basic procedures under the variance we would give, presumably.
Yeah, it's the mouth rehabilitation, but with his very unique, minimally invasive and natural procedures, which sets him apart.
Understood.
And I think the one thing too is it's all under one roof, where other places you have to bounce around doctor to doctor, so it's like one-stop shop to get your whole mouth.
It's a fully vertically integrated
Yeah,
situation.
yeah.
Okay, let the record show that there's no one in the audience this evening on this case, so.
It's the
let
one
me
that
ask
else in the
for
audience, right?
comment and questions from audience members. So with that, any other questions from the board? Counselor, would you like to sum up or?
I think I'd just be repeating what's been said, but I just ask that the board look upon this favorably. It's just a unique process, a unique applicant, for what is a unique place to put their business, set themselves down, become part of the Millburn community, and bring to Millburn something, as the planner and the client said, is not available in any other surrounding town. It is unique, and I'd ask that you look upon it favorably, because it is a type of a business, if you would, that would be complementary to your downtown vision because of its uniqueness and bringing something new to Millburn. We'd ask that you look favorably upon this application.
Thank you. With that, I'll close the public portion of the hearing. So board members, what's your thoughts?
Can I just, before you guys all talk, and only because I know this wasn't a planning board, and I recall that there was an issue with the very first parking space off of Millburn Avenue. And I think it was a condition, because they were concerned with less proximity to the street and back, customers backing in, backing out. I think it was reserved for, I want to say, somebody who was always there, like wasn't in and out. So I didn't know if you wanted to take, if that was going to be an issue. Or if you wanted to just take
Just to
it.
clarify, this has been approved by the planning
When
board?
it was approved
For the
it was
restaurant.
approved
For a restaurant.
I remember.
For the
Yeah,
restaurant.
it's on page 12, it says, in addition, the first parking space of angled parking closest to Milford Avenue shall be reserved for the restaurant manager, also with appropriate parking space markings and signage installed as approved by the township
Because I
engineer.
think it was,
So that's an excellent point that Eileen brought up. With the if the board acts favorably, thank you, Jessica, on the application, would the applicant agree as a condition to have that first parking space of angled parking closest to Milburn Avenue be reserved for an employee of the practice?
Yes, they would have the employee that would be there for all working hours.
It's interesting because currently there's a sign that shows sort of employee parking in the back right corner. There's 2 spots. That's currently listed in 2 signs back there.
Those we can,
Yeah, obviously those would be changed. Yeah.
no, it's just the concern of the one in the front. And
Right.
because we have certain technicians that would either be there all day long or the doctor himself who would be there all day long. So it would be someone who is there for the entire duration that the office is operating would be in that first space. Or nobody would be in that space. If it's just the doctor and 1 or 2 patients, there would be no need for anyone to park that close to Milburn Avenue.
And the applicant understands that the conditions that were promulgated by the planning board will continue to apply to the extent.
For the 1 space per tenant,
Well, just all the representations and conditions contained in the resolution that was granted by the planning
well,
board will continue to apply.
the only issue I have is that the planning board wanted the restaurant to obtain 7 off-site parking spaces.
That doesn't apply because it's a different. use.
Doesn't apply.
Correct.
Okay. Other than that, yes.
But all other site plans.
Yes.
That are not, they do not have to do with the restaurant, they would remain as conditions.
Yes.
Okay, so back to comment from the board. What's everyone think? Go ahead.
I can go first.
Sure,
All right,
sure.
thanks. Thanks for your testimony today. So as I stated already earlier, I'm struggling with the code, which was presumably was written with thoughtful deliberation by the writers and the authors of the code. And they name multiple uses, none of which are medical, dental, ambulatory surgery. And one will assume that they were deliberate in that omission because of the specific characteristics of those entities, that there are characteristics of medical offices and dental offices and ambulatory surgery centers that they don't want in this zone. What comes to mind as just as a citizen and a resident, that probably because there are residences that would be a very close proximity to this practice and to any potential practice that could go in that particular site and in that zone. With regard to the positive criteria, what was mentioned by the applicant and the planner was the positive criteria of the design, open area, and an active storefront, which are positives, and this rather unique technology. But detrimental, I am concerned about the public health and implications just from a personal point of view for the residents that are above and that are in the building that will with mitigation, but would have to contend with medications, X-ray, CT, the radiation from that, if there's any, which of course would be controlled, but we all know that things sometimes can happen. And of course, the medical waste, and lastly, the medications that would be stored there, which could be attractive to people who are having difficulty with substance abuse. This is with regard to how it benefits the community who couldn't use a dentist, but I am concerned that clients that come here would be cash paying. It would be limited to those who could afford this therapy. It wouldn't be open to those who have insurance or who have limited cash resources. And then finally, there are other zones that do allow this by intention, by the way the code is written. The CMO zone mentioned by the planner. Right down the street is the B2 highway business, which allows medical office, and RO, which is nearby. So I'm an alternate, so I don't get a vote tonight, but I would not be comfortable approving this were I to vote.
Thank you, Janet. Any other thoughts?
Well, my thought on this is that, yes, sir, it's certainly not a currently approved usage. You're also talking about a service which is for a technology which is unique. It's up and coming. I mean, the implant technology has come a long way over the past, when it first started, about 20-some years ago, whatever. And to have something of that high caliber, that cutting edge here in town, it's kind of a nice thing to have. It certainly is a logical place to have this sort of thing. As has been mentioned, it's a cash pay situation. Insurance is likely not to cover this. So for it to be in an affluent area makes a lot of sense. You're talking about a service for which there is, I would think, a sizable market, a sizable accessible market, and as such, you're going to be you're not going to see turnover. You're not going to see the kind of turnover in this space that you would see were it to be another type of retailer, or were it to be a retailer or some sort of a restaurant establishment. So the turnover, the churn issue is pretty much eliminated in this situation, and you end up with a building which is not vacant, which is occupied, which has been nicely appointed, which is modern looking and well maintained. And to me, this seems like a very positive thing for the town.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Further thought?
I would agree. I would actually agree with Wolfgang. I prefer to see a building like this occupied versus vacant for, long periods of time. And just going on what he was saying, this is a very unique, it's a unique concept in dentistry. And I think that, you think of a general dentist's office, and those can be very high volume practices, where you're going to have a ton of people. I mean, I've been to a dentist's office where it's like the waiting room is packed with like 30 people in it. You're not going to have that here. And yes, it is going to be kind of limiting who can go to this because, practice like this, because they're not accepting insurance, but, the town itself is a, affluent town with, upscale businesses, upscale restaurants. You would hope that, people who are coming to an office like this are gonna, maybe if it's just a consultation, go out for lunch afterwards and, support other businesses. I get the point that, that right now we're not zoned for something like this, but again, this is not just a general dentistry practice or just a general doctor's office. This is a very, very unique, subset. And I don't think that, the people who were drafting, the ordinance could have envisioned necessarily, however many years ago, something like this. I do think also, in terms of the positive criteria, it is located near, similar types of businesses. We're not trying to put this in a residential, in a residential neighborhood. It's still in a business district, located pretty close to the border of where medical, dental offices would officially be allowed. I would feel comfortable supporting the application.
Thank you. I'm gonna go next, actually. So typically, I'm not a huge fan when you see use variance in downtown, because I feel that if the town council wanted to change the use, it would be their prerogative to do so, not so much the zoning board. But this is an unusual situation, because if this was somewhere on, Main Street or somewhere further down Milburn Avenue where there was no parking allowed, it'd be a real hard sell. But here you have a situation where it's a very nice contained piece of property with parking, with the ability to accommodate the users of this facility. So it's kind of an unusual package in the downtown, because you don't normally see a lot attached to a facility like this, which takes the burden of managing this piece off of the township and keeps it on private property, which I think is a win for the downtown. A facility like this, it's as classified as boutique, that's what it is. It's not for everyone. This is not going to be a high volume operation. So I don't see it as being detrimental to the neighbors, detrimental to the people living upstairs, detrimental to really anything around it. So in terms of its use, I think it would let's put it this way, would be beneficial. So I don't really I would support this application.
Look, I agree with those comments. The one thing that does trouble me a little bit, it goes back to Rob's question, which is what was done by the owner to try to use this space in a way that is consistent with, the variance and, with the ordinances. So I'm sure they did do work, obviously, that's why the applicants are here today. But I would like to have known, were there 100 people who wanted this property and they selected the applicants? Has no one approached the owner, or the owner not able to find anybody other than the applicants? And it just would help me to know that, if we are going to allow a use that is inconsistent with the terms of the ordinance, that there really was an effort that was made, and we don't really have a record on that. But I agree with all the comments about the use. I'm not really troubled by the use, and I think it may, in many respects, be beneficial to the town. But I do wish we had a better record with respect to that point.
That's true.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? So we have two variances here this evening. We have 1D, 1C. So we'll be breaking this up into two votes. I'm good with that. You're good with that. First one will be the D variance. So we will deal with the use first, and then we will deal with the loading space second. The loading space, obviously, that was approved in the previous resolution as well, just so everyone knows. So going forward, use variance, do I have a motion on the business not permitted in the zone, 606.7?
You could go.
Okay, I move approval of the use variance proposed for calendar number 3908-22.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second that.
And let's just define maybe the use. Should it be clear, like I have
So-
written down fully integrated mouth rehabilitation.
Right. That's pretty close. And that's what I have as well, basically. And, again, I always, implore the board members to read the resolutions carefully and make sure it accurately reflects what is being voted on, regardless of how the vote is.
Sure.
And reminding everyone that 5 affirmative votes is required for passage of this application.
Ashley Jordan,
Yes.
Chandra Marjani,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence.
Yes.
Wolfgang Torres.
Yes.
Gary Rosen.
Yes.
Jessica Black.
Yes.
Craig Plattner.
Yes. Next up, we have the off-street loading space. Can I have a motion on that variance requested?
I'm-
Approve approval of the off-street loading space, variance. Yes, is that right? I'll get it. Getting it?
Bulk
Yeah, no.
variance for having insufficient number of loading spaces.
And a second. Second.
Who's that, Gary?
Gary?
Ashley Aventura. Yes. Sean Giovanni.
Yes.
Amy Lawrence.
Yes.
Wolfgang Torres.
Yes.
Gary Rosen.
Yes.
Jessica Black.
Yes.
Craig Plattner.
Yes. Good luck with your new business.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You can contact me if you want some other language to clarify.
What's up?
I said, feel free to contact me if you need to have some language development.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all for your patience and your time.
Thank you. Is there anything I would like to discuss? Actually, let me know that there's no other.
Real quick, I know we did an extension of a variance today. Is there a timeline? Is there at some point, gee, this expired 3 years ago, and now they want to come and get an extension, and because now they're selling the house, and so how do you want to go about that?
I think my recommendation is just to take it, I might not give the answer, but take it on a case by case basis.
Okay.
Because I think otherwise, having a hard and fast rule, we don't even know what the circumstances may be, why somebody delayed on a variance, or I can't tell you how many times clients have contacted me where literally the contractor crapped out on them and really
Right.
caused a massive problem
Is
with the
there
bank and all the other issues.
Is there a limit as to the number of the number of extensions you could give a property owner? They supposedly.
For what, to extend the variance?
Yeah,
Right, so there's a difference between extending a site plan approval and extending a variance. Extending a site plan approval or a subdivision approval, there's statutory criteria and rules governing that. For variance, there's no real rules, it's really up to the discretion of the board. But certainly, after a period of time, if somebody keeps coming in and giving the same tale of woe, the board may just say, you know what, enough time has passed, we're gonna respectfully ask you to come back in and re-present with your new expert, et cetera.
that's all.
We don't have to give variances on variances.
Right. Unless the ordinance radically changes, of course.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? A second, sorry. There's a second. Chandra on the second. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Have a good evening, folks. Good evening.
On,
Wait, stop.
on the